These people, these Pixar people continuously amaze me because they come up with something that actually looks as though it takes place in this happy real world place. Every plot line is very, very plausible. It's written with characters of great human dimension that are funny, and it's cracked with adventure and jeopardy and humor and love. Motion pictures now are probably just beginning to live up to their their true potential of being this immersive experience, going from beyond black and white flickering images now to fully immersive 3D color, high definition. You don't even know where the real world starts and the fake world begins, and it's just going to become more and more so. And yet, with that, none of that's going to matter unless the story and the emotions that you allow us to become invested in are going to be something that we can recognize. And again, Pixar and Toy Story is able to do this in ways that almost defies speculation. We care so deeply about this that the connection you have right back to the original generation of Toy Story is still right there. It will always be the most amazing thing you've ever seen. They started off as pure adversaries and learned how to accept each other's strengths, forgive each other's failures, and respect each other's as individuals. That right there, their opposites attract in this case, and you need somebody to complement. You know, you don't always know everything. Sometimes you got to turn to somebody like Buzz and say, "What do you think?" And you got to respect Buzz's answer. Woody is a passionate guy who throws himself into every action. You notice how like Woody just runs across a lawn? He does it full bore. He doesn't hesitate for a moment. As soon as he has an instinctive thought of I have to help them or I have to run away, he does it with 100% commitment. You got to love that about anybody. Well, he's a symbologist. He's a guy that's fascinated by the constant solving of puzzles. It has always been that way. He has a exchange with Dr. Sienna Brooks, and he says, "Well, you were a weird kid." Yeah, I was a weird kid too. I was always alone, and I was always thinking about stuff that no one ever bothered with. And because of that, he always has something to do. This is one of the reasons I love playing Dr. Professor Robert Langdon is. Because his mind is always seeing things that nobody else is. He's searching out patterns. He's searching out. He'll see a symbol that he can go back through all of history and explain what it means and how it got to have that meaning and its import to society. So he's always sort of the smartest guy in the room, and he's also called upon in order to literally solve those problems that no one else can because they need the expertise of a professor of symbology. In the great tradition of Sherlock Holmes, he's a guy who's living in a world of his own and is looking forward to the excitement. The game is afoot, so to speak, of a quest or a treasure hunt or a scavenger hunt. That's really almost what these movies come off, clue to clue, site to site, all along the trail that will lead you to somewhere. But there's always a mystery to be solved at the same time. And it's up to Dan Brown, quite frankly, in order to make the maps for those trails, and he's able to do it. The great beginning of this movie is Robert Langdon is in a hospital room being treated by this young British doctor, and he's there for literally out of consciousness, and a few minutes later he realizes that not only is he in a hospital room for reasons that he doesn't quite understand, but he's also in the city of Florence, Italy, for reasons that he has no idea of whatsoever. So even if you're just trying to find out why he's there, that alone is an answer that takes about 2 hours to come around to. Ron Howard is looking to cast it as interesting as possible, and there's some archetypes that Dan Brown hints at that can actually go any number of ways. It's not necessarily required to have an actor like Omar Sy play who he does, but the international aspect of the setting, as well as the environments of something like the World Health Organization, begs and allows for international actors of all stripes, all colors, all diversity. There is, outside of Ben Foster, who plays an important but tertiary character in Inferno. I'm the only American, and there's only 3 men and there's 3 women. So it's a bunch of people of different colors and the 2 different genders that make the movie go. And I just think that, well, that's just the way in all honesty, that's the way it should be. Well, Dan is great because he writes these things, so he does all the true heavy lifting in order to come up with the theme and the setting. The adaptation from book to screen it's a particular beast. It doesn't have an omnipotent narrator of Dan Brown's voice, but it does have the specifics of the when and the where and the why, and it ends up being part of a months-long exercise in which we're all involved, in order trying to discern what's the most that we can cram visually and verbally into the screenplay and into the final movie. What I love about these things is that we are in places like the Hall of the 500 or the Uffizi Gallery for a specific purpose. We're there in order to take in what is there. We're not just setting a fight or a headquarters or something like that in a groovy backdrop. We're there in order to study the masterpieces that are up on the wall and try to find a clue that is inside those very masterpieces. And guess what? Dan Brown has figured out that the clues actually sort of exist, or at least there's a mystery there that no one has been able to figure out the root of. And that ends up being, I think, the biggest secret out of all of these, out of all the films. The theme, of course, is fun to examine, and in this case, overpopulation. It's an important theme to take into account, and everybody can understand it. But I think the real pleasure that makes them the popular films that they are is that it is a quest, it is a hunt, it is a mystery to be solved, and as the clue comes in, the whole audience has to go, I didn't know that. I played Chesley Sullenberger, who landed a plane in the Hudson when he was supposed to be flying between LaGuardia and Charlotte, North Carolina, with 154 people on board, with him 155, on January 15th, 2009, a day that could have been one of the blackest in the history of aviation and a very black one in the history of the United States, but it ended up being an extraordinary day. His heroic act, I think, was that place where he stepped outside himself, was to follow his instincts as opposed to the steps in the book. When he, in a nano flash of instinct, probably that he couldn't even like place himself in the timeline, but at one point, all of his sinews and synapses said, "There's only one place to land, and it's that big flat, expanse of water that's right in the middle." And if you were going to take time in order to have the longer discussion with yourself, you would have gone through that's never been done before. Every time it's happened, it's going to rip the engines right off the wing, and we are going to cartwheel, and we're going to fall apart, and I probably won't even survive. He didn't think that. He thought, no, I can make this landing. He will never say that he's a hero, but that was one heroic thing that he did. The screenplay that I thought was so perfectly a blend of behavior and procedure that whatever shortcuts, whatever moments that we have condensed or altered somehow still have the pure DNA of what I think the moment meant. It is, in a lot of ways, a quintessential New York story. And it's an era of goodwill. It's just a little bit different from, doing something else there. What's the name of the movie? Hey, is this Sully? They get a lot of that. Hey, is this Sully? And because I had the white hair, I was walking around town. Oh, man, did I get a lot of that. Sully! I got an awful lot of the Sully screamed at me. Way to go, man! Miracle! Miracle Man! Miracle on the Hudson Man! Sully! I got that everywhere I went because of that shock of white hair and that beard. But that ends up being part of it is certainly
It's the power of the movies. It's the power of the cinema. They already felt a part of something. He's a master filmmaker, and you can tell that from any number of, goes on and on, the films that he's actually made movies. You want to say, I don't think anybody but Clint could have a movie that is literally as dark as that, or as minimalistic as that, or with as big a vast canvas as that. It's intimidating, but it's not fun. You know, it's incredibly pleasant. He's very accessible. It's a diminished gravitas from the event itself. It's a transposed one. It's been refined and translated well after the fact. 7 years later, we're coming up with this story that is trying to encapsulate a real moment that was important to people, and I think Mr. Eastwood has succeeded. I think he has encapsulated a moment that was really important to people and somehow binds us all together in the best of all possible ways. Eamon Bailey is one of the 3 founding fathers of the Circle. He is the visionary, the idea man, not the financial guy and not the tech guy. He's the guy who dreams big. The Circle is that great thing that the internet hopes to be and wants to be, and dear God, I hope it never becomes. It is, if you took all of the great companies or all the great ideas that have become internet commerce, if you took Amazon and Google and Apple and Facebook and Uber and jammed it all into one entity, that's what the Circle is. The Circle is, once you become a member, once you enter the Circle, everything that you need to do is in one house, on one tablet, on one phone. You never have to give money or faith or allegiance to anyone outside the Circle, because the Circle will take care of all of your lifestyle needs. That's what it is. A very good idea. But as a lot of very good ideas, it can translate into living in a totalitarian dystopia. May is the blank canvas upon which Eamon Bailey and Tom Stenton can paint the future reality of the Circle. She is unencumbered. She is new. She is young. She lives in a world, her own world is as complicated as anybody else's. He has a very real gift for capturing ordinary life in more like inside the superstructure of what the movie has to be. The stuff he did as Aziz Ansari, I thought, was not only incredibly hilarious but also really, really real. And I think there's any number of places in the movie where his willingness to let people just explore, almost to the point of straying, but not quite going off the reservations, in order just to see what the human behavior would take in order to get you there. I think that's his strength, and we all leapt upon it, particularly on the power of his movie. Emma is phenomenally untouched and grounded in ways, and she's also crazy facile when it comes down to the architecture of making movies. I mean, she's done all those Harry Potter films, so she knows very complicated kind of like filmmaking. She also knows that none of that really matters unless you're actually going to be able to inhabit the moment, and her ability to inhabit the moment, I think, is pretty profound. It ends up being a reflection of who we are as a people, and both I think the internet is always going to be a reflection of the good and bad of our own individual human nature. I think Patton's a genius. He's already a legend in so many other areas that I said, who's playing Tom Stenton? I said, Patton Oswalt. I said, well, perfect. Everything from his podcast to the stuff that he does at Largo, as well as who he plays like in Veep and the other movies that he's been in. I just think he's one of those guys who are just an absolute, as facile an actor that can do anything in any medium that exists today.